صباح الخير جميعا، وبنقدم كل الشكر والتحية لدولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة الشقيقة. التهنئة لسمو الشيخة فاطمة بنت مبارك راعية الطفولة والمرأة، ونقدم التهنئة على الإنجازات التي حققتها دولة الإمارات. بنرحب بسمو الملكة سيلفيا ملكة السويد وسمو الشيخة جواهر القاسمي، وبنقدم التهنئة على ما تم تحقيقه وعلى نجاح عقد هذا المنتدى اليوم. الجلسة التي ستبدأ الآن يشرفني أن يكون معنا بانل متميز جدا. احتراما للوقت لن أقوم بتقديم أعضاء البانل، ولكنها من القيادات البارزة في مجالات الطفولة والأمومة. يشرفني أن تكون معنا الدكتورة لمياء محسن، الأستاذة الدكتورة لمياء محسن، عميدة كلية طب جامعة الجيزة الجديدة، وأستاذة طب الأطفال، وأمين عام مجلس القومي للطفولة والأمومة سابقا. يشرفني أن تكون معنا سعادة الأستاذة أمل الدوسري، نائب رئيس لجنة حقوق الطفل بجنيف، وإسهاماتها مشهود لها. It's a great honor and privilege to have with us Professor Dr. Rangita de Silva da Luis, the Assistant Dean of the School of Law, University of Pennsylvania. She is a well-renowned name in the field of human rights, of the rule of law, and the rights of children and women. It's also a great honor to have with us Dr. Susan Bissell, the Director of the Global Partnership to Eliminate Violence Against Children. زي ما تم تقديم هذه الجلسة، عوامل التمكين ودور الوالدين في تنمية الابتكار والابداع لدى الأطفال. كما استمعنا ورأينا في الجلسة الافتتاحية، هذا المنتدى بيدور حول الحق في التعليم، والحق في التعليم إلى جانب أنه حق من حقوق الإنسان، إلا أنه حق يساعد الإنسان على الحصول على سائر حقوقه، فهو حق يتمتع بأهمية خاصة. الحق في التعليم كفله اتفاقية حقوق الطفل في مادتين، المادة 28 والمادة 29. المادة 29 حددت الهدف من التعليم، ولا يكفي أن نوفر للطفل التعليم، بل يجب أن يكون تعليم جيد النوعية يتمحور على شعور الطفل بالكرامة المتأصلة لديه، وتنمية هذا الشعور بالكرامة، وتمكين الطفل على أن يلعب دور قوي في مجتمع حر. المادة 29 من اتفاقية حقوق الطفل حددت المجالات التي يجب أن يهدف إليها التعليم. كما استمعنا أيضاً في الجلسة الافتتاحية، قادة العالم أقروا في سبتمبر 2015 الأهداف الألفية للتنمية المستدامة Sustainable Development Goals. أهم حاجة أنها تتمتع بالاستدامة، هذا هو عنصر الأهمية. نجد أن الحق في التعليم تحول الآن إلى الحق في التعلم، والفرق بين الحق في التعليم والحق في التعلم أن التعلم ينطوي على مشاركة إيجابية من الطفل. وأنا الحقيقة سعيدة جدا أن أنا أشوف الجلسة التي تحدث فيها الأطفال، وأرى أن هذه الجلسة تحدد الهدف من هذا المنتدى، أعرب عن أملي أن يكون منتدى العام القادم بإذن الله رصد لمدى تنفيذ الأماني والأمنيات والتوصيات التي عبر عنها الأطفال صباح اليوم. منظمة اليونسكو، وهي المنظمة المعنية بالتربية والثقافة والعلوم أطلقت مبادرة جديدة اسمها مبادرة مدن التعلم، وأنشأت شبكة لمدن التعلم. التعلم بمعنى التعلم مدى الحياة، lifelong learning، وأنشأت the global network of learning cities. زي ما استمعنا برضو في الجلسات السابقة، كنا بنتكلم على دور الأسرة، كنا بنتكلم على دور المدرسة، كنا بنتكلم على دور مراكز تنمية الأطفال، واستمعنا أيضاً لمراكز تنمية الفتيات. مفهوم الليرنينج سيتي بيدور حول هذا كله، أن تصبح المدينة بأكملها مكان للتعلم، ليس فقط داخل الأسرة أو المدرسة أو المراكز، ولكن دور العبادة، مناطق أو مراكز تقديم الخدمات. ولماذا lifelong learning؟ لأن العالم يتغير ونتعلم طول الحياة ولا يتوقف أبداً مفهوم التعلم. أنا الحقيقة يعني حضرت إلى هنا من الصين، مدينة هانجو في الصين استضافت الاجتماع الأول للدول أعضاء lifelong learning global network. وأنا على ثقة أن دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة وجميع الدول العربية المشاركة هنا ستبادر بالانضمام إلى شبكة دول أو مدن التعلم، حيث يصبح كل مكان في أي مدينة هو مركز للتعلم والتفاعل الإيجابي مع الأطفال، كما استمعنا لكلمة الملكة سيلفيا لما اتكلمت على حق الطفل في المشاركة، حق الطفل في التعبير عن رأيه، وكما طلب الأطفال أن يتم الاستماع أولاً لآراء الطفل والاستجابة للآراء التي يعبر عنها. الإبداع يرتبط بالتعليم، ويجب أن يهدف التعليم إلى تنمية مهارات الطفل، تشجيع الطفل على التفكر، تشجيع الطفل على التعبير عن رأيه، وتكون الخطوة التالية هي الإبداع. الإبداع بما يواكب تغيرات الحياة تتغير حولنا كل يوم. يشرفني أن أبدأ هذه الجلسة، ولكن أستسمحكم إن الفورمات بتاعة إدارة الحوار في هذه الجلسة سيكون أكثر تفاعلياً. في البداية ستبدأ كل متحدثة بتقديم الفكرة الأساسية لمدة 5 دقائق، بعد كده سأوجه أسئلة للمتحدثات، وأرجو أن يسنح الوقت أن يتقدم حضراتكم من الفلور ببعض الأسئلة للمتحدثات. شرفني أن أدعو السيدة الدكتورة لمياء محسن إلى الحديث، وهي ستتحدث عن أهمية تنمية مهارات الطفل في المراحل الأولى، ودور الوالدين ودور الأسرة في تنمية الإبداع.
Good afternoon. First, I would like to express really my extreme happiness to be among this distinguished group in the United Arab Emirates in such a very special forum about childhood. The speech will be about enabling factors and parents' role in developing creativity and innovation in children. And if we are going to speak about creativity and innovation, we have to speak about the quality of experiences which the child exhibits in the first few years of life, and particularly from 0 till 5. These experiences have a lifelong effect on cognitive functions and emotional functions, as well as social outcomes. They can break the cycle of poverty and eliminate disparities. If we first tackle the enabling factors, well, the first enabling factor is equal opportunities, where success and outcomes of children should depend upon talents, upon choices, upon efforts, and never ever upon gender, birthplace, or ethnicity. If we talk about enabling factors, we talk about political will of the different states. However, we don't want to minimize the whole thing to a state effect or a state problem. Though early childhood development is extremely important in sustainable development, however, parents' role and the educational role are crucial, and the exploration of children's potentials are a responsibility of parents and education in addition to the state. If we speak about parents' responsibility, parents need only to be more accepting to children's ideas in order to avoid what is known as the right answer fixation. Parents only need to listen to children's opinions, need to encourage them to express their opinions in an open environment, and need to nurture them. They only need to express warmth, listening, and encouragement. If we speak about education, education is very important. It's important to have a creative environment, creative programs, creative teachers, creative teaching, but what is this? We only think of the creative environment as big, large classes with a very good layout, having a big playground. No, it's not only that. You have to give the sustained and the consistent and the sufficient time for children to play, in addition to the equipment, material, and size of classes. And we should not minimize the effect of education on that, but the effect of programs is important. And let us agree that it's not only art and music that is creativity. Creativity is in everything. When we speak about the teachers and the method of teaching, well, it is very important that teachers have to give time for open-end questions, encourage experimentation, tolerate children's ambiguity, and encourage drawing as a way to express feelings, but at the same time, teachers should create the balance between structure and freedom. And children have to be trained that there is a time where they can be divergent, but there is a time as well that they have to conform. And they have to find out when it is appropriate. And this comes by training, and it is the role of the teachers. We'll say how. It's very nice, it's very easy to talk and tell everyone what to do. But how should everyone do? We are only some very simple things. We have to encourage positive relationships at home. Positive relationships are the primary vehicle, whether between parents and children, between the caregiver and the child, the teacher and the child, the teacher and parents, everywhere. And we really have to empower parents by giving these parents tips how they can, maybe tips through sheets, through papers. These tips will allow, or sheets will allow parents to observe their children while they're playing, at the same time get their skills. At the community level, we have to engage the whole community and hold them responsible for children. We have to encourage community service, maybe through students, and maybe incentives can be used. And we have to reach out to the high-risk families. At the end, early childhood development is a combination of education, of good health, of protection, of a safe environment. It is not restricted to one item, yet the state's rule for coming out with fundamental legislations and laws to support families is mandatory. The political commitment is mandatory. And we have a golden opportunity. We have all the international, the regional, and the national community committed to SDGs. So let's grab the golden opportunity, because early childhood development, it's smart, it's right, and it's overdue. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا دكتورة لميا. بيشرفني ان انا ادعو سعادة الدكتورة أمل الدوسري، نائب رئيس لجنة حقوق الطفل، كي تحدثنا عن قضية مهمة جدا لتمكين الطفل من الابداع، وهو الحق في اللعب. تفضل.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيسة. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، وأسعد الله مساءكم. سأتحدث باللغة العربية لإعطاء الفرصة للترجمة للراحة فقط، لأن المتحدثات التاليات سيتحدثن باللغة الإنجليزية. في مداخلتي هذه أود أن أثير النقاش حول أحد أهم العناصر المحفزة للنمو الفكري والإبداعي لدى الطفل. هذا العنصر كما ذكرته السفيرة مشيرة هو اللعب. بصفتي عضو في لجنة حقوق الطفل، لابد أن أذكر بأن هناك مادة من مواد اتفاقية حقوق الطفل تتناول حق الطفل في اللعب، وهي المادة رقم 31. هذه المادة مساوية في الأهمية للمواد الأخرى التي تتناول الحقوق المختلفة، مثل الحق في التعليم، الحق في الصحة، الحق في الحماية من العنف والاستغلال. وهذا بحد ذاته اعتراف من الدول ودليل على أهمية اللعب في تشكيل فكر ومخيلة وإبداعات الطفل. اللعب هو من أهم سمات مرحلة الطفولة. اللعب إن صح التعبير هو لغة الطفل التي من خلالها يستطيع أن يعبر عن نفسه بحرية مطلقة. اللعب ببساطة هو تدريب على الحياة. عن طريق اللعب يتعلم الأطفال كيفية المشاركة في المجتمع. عن طريق اللعب يستوعب ويتعلم الأطفال القوانين ونظام القيم المعمول به في مجتمعاتهم. يتعلم الطفل احترام نفسه بقدر احترامه للآخرين. يتعلم قبول الآخر. يتعلم فهم مشاعر الآخرين والتحكم في مشاعره هو، مشاعر الغضب والغيرة والملل. ويختبر عن طريق اللعب مشاعر الفرح والرضا، ويتعلم المرونة في التعامل. اللعب ينمي الروح الإبداعية للطفل ويعزز من خصوبة خياله وينمي قدرته في حل المشكلات. كثيراً ما نطرح هذا السؤال: كيف يمكننا أن ندرس مفاهيم حقوق الإنسان للأطفال وخاصة في مرحلة الطفولة المبكرة؟ الإجابة: عن طريق اللعب. ليس أفضل من اللعب لتعليم هذه المفاهيم. إذن كي نتعامل مع اللعب بصورة جدية، علينا أولاً أن ندرك ونعترف باللعب كحق أصيل للطفل. علينا أن نحترم هذا الحق وأن نعمل جميعاً لتوفير البيئة اللازمة لذلك، وعلينا أن نروج وندفع لتحقيق هذا الحق، بما في ذلك من سن التشريعات المناسبة التي تضمن إعمال هذا الحق. ولكن وللأسف الشديد أستطيع أن أصرح هنا بأن ما نشاهده على أرض الواقع حالياً لا يتفق مع هذا الاعتراف والاحترام والترويج. أذكر لكم على سبيل المثال مثالين اثنين. المثال الأولي: في محاولة مني للوقوف على تعريف اللعب بغرض المشاركة في هذا المنتدى، قمت بإرسال رسالة نصية عن طريق الواتساب لبعض الأمهات من الصديقات وبناتهن. طلبت منهن الرد عليها حال قراءتها، يعني بدون تفكير عميق. هذه الرسالة مكتوب فيها التالي: في كلمة أو جملة قصيرة أذكري ماذا يعني لك وقت لعب أطفالك. توقفت كثيراً عند قراءة إجابتهن. أقرأ عليكم بعضهن: مضيعة لوقتي، التأخر في حل الواجبات، ثياب متسخة، عدم حل الواجبات المدرسية، لا يوجد وقت للعب، وولدي لا يلعب. الأخيرة هذه أعتقد أنها هي قاتلة. لا أخفي عليكم مدى القلق الذي شعرت به عند قراءة الإجابات، بالرغم أنها لم تكن صادمة أو مفاجئة. على العكس، أعتقد بأنها جاءت تعبير عام عن مزاج مجتمعي تجاه اللعب. العديد من المربين والأبوين يعرفون اللعب على أنه عكس التعلم، بمعنى إذا كان الطفل يلعب فإنه لا يتعلم. ولهذا فإن أوقات الأطفال المخصصة للعب في انكماش مستمر حسب دراسة أجريت في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. أثبتت هذه أو كشفت هذه الدراسة على أن وقت اللعب قد انخفض بمعدل 12 ساعة في خلال 20 سنة الماضية، 12 ساعة أسبوعياً طبعاً. يبدو أن هناك عداء سافر تجاه اللعب بحجة أنه مضيعة لوقت التعلم. هذه العلاقة بين اللعب والتعلم يعتقد البعض أنها علاقة غير شرعية ويجب الفصل بينهما تماماً. المثال الثاني وأنهي به مداخلتي، تبين لي من خلال السنوات الأربع أثناء عضويتي في لجنة حقوق الطفل ومن خلال فحص التقارير المقدمة من الدول الأعضاء في هذه الاتفاقية، تبين أن من يضع السياسات الوطنية التعليمية والتنموية والمسؤولين عن تنفيذها والجهات المعنية بتنفيذ اتفاقية حقوق الطفل يقللون من أهمية الحق المنصوص عليه في المادة 31. هناك إغفال، لست أقول إغفال متعمد، وإنما هناك إغفال لرصد ما تم إنجازه في مجال تعزيز حق الطفل في اللعب في هذه الدول، بينما هناك إسهاب في رصد التقدم المحرز في إنفاذ الحقوق الأخرى. هذا مخالف لمبدأ شمولية وتساوي الحقوق الواردة في الاتفاقية. وعند أثناء مناقشة الوفود الرسمية أثناء الاجتماعات معهم أتعمد طرح أسئلة تتعلق بالمادة 31، ويتولى طبعاً زملائي في اللجنة بطرح أسئلة مختلفة عن الحقوق الأخرى. تتم الإجابة من قبل الوفود الرسمية على الأسئلة الأخرى، وتغفل في أحيان كثيرة الإجابة على السؤال المتعلق باللعب أو في الحق في وقت الفراغ. يضطرني ذلك إلى أخذ الكلمة مرة أخرى، طلب الكلمة من الرئيس وإعادة توجيه السؤال، وهذا أيضاً له دلالاته الواضحة. أكتفي بهذا القدر وشكراً لاستماعكم.
شكراً دكتورة أمل، حنرجع لك تاني إن شاء الله. وأنا حابة بس ألفت نظر السيدات والسادة الحضور إلى ابننا اللي كان قاعد هنا تقريباً مطرحي وقال طلبي أو توصيتي إن اليوم الدراسي يكون 4 ساعات، والدكتور النعيمي قال ما فيش حاجة اسمها يوم 4 ساعات، على الأقل 6 ساعات. أنا بذكركم بما قيل عشان هرجع بعد كده للدكتورة أمل في مرحلة النقاش. وأنا بشوف إن الاثنين متفقين، هو الطفل عاوز 4 ساعات المواد، ولكن 2 لعب أيضا بهدف التعلم زي ما الدكتورة أمل قالت. بيشرفني الآن it's my great honor and privilege to invite Dr. Rangita De Silva to talk to us. Please, you have the floor on systems and how we can put in place structures and systems to enable and empower children. And she will give us some examples of policy making and how the different countries are working on this. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Mushira. It is indeed an honor to be in Abu Dhabi on a very auspicious occasion when we are celebrating the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but we are also thinking very creatively about innovative policies and laws to create enabling environments for caregiving of children and the right of parents and caregivers to give care to children. As Dr. Mushira explained, I am the Associate Dean of International Studies at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. But before joining the law school, I worked with Secretary Hillary Clinton on a program on global women's leadership that she inaugurated at the State Department in 2012. Secretary Clinton, soon after the presidential elections, her first public appearance was in Washington, D.C. at the Children's Defense Fund. As many of you know, Secretary Clinton started her distinguished career as a child rights advocate. And that became her defining goal in life. And the rallying cry of children's rights has been one of the most monumental tasks that she has continued to work on in her different capacities in public life. In any case, in Washington, D.C., on Wednesday, when she addressed the Children's Defense Fund, she made once again a plea to the world, and these were her words: "I believe that the measure of any society is how it treats its children." And I want to remind us once again about those words and how striking those words are. That is the measure through which we judge the good governance, the rule of law, and the human rights and the national security of any community or any nations. So children's rights are national security issues. They form the primacy of human rights, and they are mainstreamed into the rule of law. The world is facing an invisible crisis in childcare, leaving millions of children without the support they need. It is estimated that 35.5 million children do not have the adequate support and care of parents and caregivers. The Sustainable Development Goals showcase that early childhood development is a primacy in the development agenda. But putting early childhood development at the core of policy debates, at the very quintessential core of legislative developments, is now the challenge. As Queen Sylvia so eloquently stated, parenting is key. So my question, my challenge to you is, how does the role play, the state, the government play a pivotal role in caregiving? How does the state's role and how does the state's role in developing legislation and policies play an enormously pivotal role in enhancing caregiving in the family and in the private sphere? Article 3 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child states very clearly that the state should take an appropriate legislative role to assure that the care and the protection of children is at a primacy. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is also quoted in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and it states clearly that the care of the child and caregiving and the recognition of care as a human right is at its core in the CRC. Further, Article 18 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child calls upon states parties to ensure the recognition of the principle of caregiving by both parents. And I want to ensure and emphasize that caregiving is the role and the duty of both parents. Most often in traditional societies, we see that women and mothers have to carry the disproportionate duty and responsibility of caregiving. But the Convention on the Rights of the Child, read together with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, states clearly that both parents have to ensure the responsibility of caregiving, and that states shall render appropriate assistance to parents and guardians in this caregiving role. And the Convention on the Rights of the Child's own provisions on caregiving have been strengthened by the Sustainable Development Goals. And we know clearly, as Dr. Lamia has reminded us, that the Sustainable Development Goals 4.2 speaks to early childhood development. But I want to emphasize that the Sustainable Development Goals 5.4 must be clearly emphasized. The Sustainable Development Goals 5.4 states clearly that the value of unpaid care and domestic work through the provision of public service, infrastructure, and social protection policies, and the promotion of shared responsibility within the household and the family must be emphasized. So that shared caregiving role is what I am going to now speak on. We were very inspired by the presence of Queen Sylvia of Sweden, because Sweden leads the way in providing that shared responsibility of caregiving through laws and policies that ensure mandatory caregiving policies for both parents. So equalizing gender roles in caregiving in Sweden make sure that 3 out of 4 fathers make use of paid parental leave during the child's first to 3 years to ensure that the child has the benefit of both parents through publicly funded social welfare systems. So what this has maintained is that shared parenting caregiving is the responsibility of both parents and is part of good governance. Parents taking care of children receive a financial benefit from the state. And Sweden's inspirational caregiving policies have been mimicked in other Western European countries, in Norway, in Finland, and in Iceland. And I will speak further about those provisions in further detail in the question and answer period. But what this shows is that shared parenting involves the caregiving of both parents, and it mandates the role of fathers and male caregivers in the lives of children, including what is now known as daddy days in Sweden and in other Western European countries. What daddy days do is that it ensures that fathers who exercise the right to give care are privileged in the workplace and in the home. The fundamental right of a father's caregiving responsibilities are celebrated through these daddy days. And what has now come to be known as fatherhood by gentle coercion, so that fathers are trained to be better caregivers through these provisions, through these policies, through training, and through mandated, fully paid caregiving that is available not just for women, but for men. We are at the cusp of the Australian government passing mandatory caregiving policies that allow for 18 to 20 weeks of paid caregiving, where 80% of the salary is paid to both parents to provide caregiving for families and young children. Unfortunately, my own country, the United States, lags far behind some of these inspiring and novel and creative policies. I was very glad to see that caregiving and family leave became an election issue. Both campaigns made sure to articulate the importance of caregiving in their election platforms. President-elect Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, articulated the importance of caregiving in her seminal speech at the Republican National Congress, where she made clear that the presidential-elect's platform would include mandatory paid leave for mothers. Secretary Clinton's own campaign platform went beyond mandatory family leave for women, and it made sure that family leave was gender neutral, that both mothers and fathers would be allowed fully paid caregiving leave, family leave, for 12 weeks in the aftermath of the birth of a child. So Unfortunately, currently, what we have now in the United States through the Family and Medical Leave Act is unpaid care leave to 12 weeks. And this does not comply with the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The spirit of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the spirits of the Sustainable Development Goals call for state-led, state-provided policies and legislative initiatives that celebrate and create an enabling environment through policies and through laws for parents to fulfill caregiving roles to ensure the full potential of their children's achievements. So once again, I want to emphasize that children's rights are not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. As you know, providing appropriate and enriching care is not just a development issue, it is a national security issue. It ensures that generations to come will be fully prepared to lead the world in the sciences, in culture, in the arts, and be able to take the kind of moral leadership that the world so needs. So Dr. Mushira, I want to thank you for inspiring us. Your own policies, your own leadership in Egypt, at the African Union and in the world has been a trailblazing impact on the ways in which we think innovatively and creatively about policies and laws that enable caregiving and provide the kind of astute insights to create a world that celebrates the child and the human being. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Rangita. I fully agree with you that children's issues, children's rights are national security issues, and the proof is what we see right now, neglecting education of children, neglecting participation of children has made it easy for the radicalization of some youth, and some youth now are driven into very destructive acts against innocent civilians, against national heritage, and now the world is faced with a very, very serious problem, and the only way to deal with this problem is through education, through family care, a better family environment. Related to this, I invite Dr. Susan Bissell, who will speak about the protection of children, protecting children in the face of changing world now, the online world, the virtual world, its impact on children, how much it provides benefits, how much threats, and how to provide the protection. And this is also what Queen Sylvia in her speech alluded to. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Khattab. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for the kind invitation to be here with you. As I looked out my window this morning, I was reminded how far away I am from Canada, my home country, and from New York, where I live right now. I want to start my more informal remarks here with a quotation from the former deputy of the Council of Europe, whose last name I can't pronounce, so I won't, but her first name is Maud. And she once said, and it has stayed with me forever, that children are not mini human beings with mini rights. They're actually children who have rights in their own. So my job here is first to introduce a little bit these concepts of child protection and special protection in the next few minutes, and then I want to share with you what I think is the biggest impediment to the creativity and innovation of children, and that is the violence that they experience in their everyday lives, in their families, their communities, and their schools. So generally, when we think about child protection and we think about the Convention on the Rights of the Child and various other international legal standards and national legal standards, we're thinking about things like children affected by armed conflict. We're thinking about children living in alternative care, children living with disabilities, violence, exploitation, abuse, neglect, trafficking, torture. All of these are things that we find in the new Sustainable Development Goals, and these are the protections things that children need to be protected from. However, for the purposes of this meeting and this impediment that I spoke about, violence against children, I'm really going to focus on abuse, neglect, and everyday violence. As I said, these are now captured very well in Agenda 2030, the new Sustainable Development Goals. And it is with those goals in mind and the specific targets for the safety and security of children that we've established this new global partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, last year, 1 billion children experienced violence in their families, their homes, and their communities. That's a piece of data that was published in a journal called Pediatrics. And I mention that 1 billion figure because that means that 1 in every 2 children around the world had their creativity and their innovation subdued or suppressed. And I think it's quite a staggering picture. I also wanted to share with you the fact that according to some research last year, 3/4 of the children that were in this survey between the ages of 2 and 4 experienced violent discipline. And this is something I think that is relevant in every country of the world. And it links very closely to what we were listening to already about early child development and that first 3 years of a child's life and how important it is that they are kept safe and secure and that they don't experience violence. Children with disabilities are twice as likely as their non-disabled peers to experience violent discipline. And that brings me to what we've already heard about caregiving. I want to stress the Article 13 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the primacy of a child in a family and the importance of state support for families and caregivers, and with that, the importance as well of support to caregivers as one of the most important strategies for violence prevention in childhood. Together with the World Health Organization and a number of other partners, we have amassed in one place 7 strategies for violence prevention in childhood. They are called INSPIRE, each of the letters of INSPIRE standing for something, and the S stands for support to families and caregivers. And I want to stress again, importantly, in early childhood, where if children experience repeated stress, we call it toxic stress, this will have a definite impact on their innovation, their ability to be creative. And I think we're reminded in that safety and security of children when we think about that group of young people that were on the stage here this morning, so bright and obviously so well protected. I'm going to leave that for my formal remarks, and I look forward to the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. And as I explained when introducing the format of this session, we will now move to the second segment. And Dr. Lamia, you made an excellent presentation. And I think now the question is about the responsibility of the state or responsibility of the family, where to draw the line, and enabling. How? Tell us the enabling factor of the family, the caregivers, the parents, how you see this achieved.
No. Well, I think parents should be really taught how to do positive parenting because they don't know, and this is the real problem. If we teach parents, if we give them, and this can be done through a lot of innovations. Sometimes it's very good to have a hotline, to have a website on which resources can be shared with parents, on which they can have maybe advice of how to deal with their parents. Parents have, public awareness campaigns should be done to really raise the alertness that the children learn and learn correct through playing. It's not through always like dictating. It's not the contact hours only in school. It's not the contact hours with the teacher, but maybe in the morning. And I recall what the very handsome young boy said, that 4 hours, yes, he meant 4 contact hours with the teachers, but maybe self-directed learning for another 2 hours where they learn at their pace, where they learn through playing, as you mentioned, Ambassador Khattab, should be a very good idea. So we should enhance parent skills, tell them how. The community services are very important, and as I mentioned in the presentation, maybe student volunteers from school can help, and this will be indirectly teaching them as future parents what does it mean to help children play and learn through playing, and how to help children be creative and innovative, because it's a form of on-the-job training for them. Outreach programs reaching for the high-risk families, supplying transportation, maybe cash transfer, should be a very good idea to the community, and the umbrella of all of that is the state. The legislations, as Dr. Angita mentioned, the laws, the bylaws, it's not only putting them, it's making them in action. Making sure that they are really applied is very good. And clinging, we are all looking for development. All states are looking forward for development. But how? It's by what we do.
شكرا دكتورة لميا. وده الحقيقة بيرجعني تاني لفكرة مدن التعلم، إن المدينة كلها بتسعى للتعلم، والتعلم ما هواش من الكبير تجاه الصغير، ولكن ممكن أيضا الصغير بيعلم الكبير. فجميع أهل المدينة منخرطين في عملية تعلم على مختلف المستويات. شكرا دكتورة لميا. دكتورة أمل الدوسري، حضرتك اتكلمتي على قضية مهمة جدا وهي الحق في اللعب، وإحنا هنا بنبص للعب كوسيلة للتعلم. ممكن حضرتك تشرحي لنا لجنة حقوق الطفل كيف تناولت الحق في اللعب؟ هل اللجنة قامت بأي إجراء كي ترشد أو تساعد الدول الأعضاء على الوفاء بحق الطفل في اللعب؟
شكرا دكتورة مشيرة على هذا السؤال. في الحقيقة مثل ما ذكرت في مثالي الأخير حول ملاحظاتي في اللجنة اللي عند فحص التقارير الدورية المقدمة للجنة، نلاحظ بأن هناك سوء فهم لبعض من الأحكام وبعض من المواد الواردة في الاتفاقية. عند ذلك تقوم اللجنة بتطوير تعليق عام general comment، وهذا ما حدث بالنسبة للمادة رقم 31 حول حق الطفل في وقت الفراغ واللعب والترفيه. ففي سنة 2013 قامت اللجنة ب adopted أقرت الجنرال كومنت، التعليق العام رقم 17 حول هذه المادة. ما هي التعليقات العامة؟ فقط للمعلومات، متأكدة أن الكثير منكم اطلعوا على هذه التعليقات العامة، ولكن هذه التعليقات توفر تفسيراً رسمياً لبعض أحكام والحقوق الواردة في الاتفاقية التي قد يلتبس على بعض الدول فهمها، مما ينتج عنه انتهاكات لتطبيق هذه الحقوق على أرض الواقع في بلدانهم. فعندها تقوم اللجنة بتطوير هذا التعليق العام، وهذا ما قامت به اللجنة تجاه اللعب. وأرجو منكم الاطلاع على هذا التعليق العام إذا لم تكن لك لم تتوفر لكم الفرصة للاطلاع عليه مسبقا. شكرا.
شكرا دكتورة أمل. دكتور رانجيتا، you spoke and you gave us examples. How do you see the way forward now to really fulfill the rights of the child? When we look at the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it's not just citing rights or guaranteeing rights, but it paid very special attention to the measures of implementation. How do you see the general measures of implementing this right?
Thank you, Dr. Mushra. That is indeed a very important question. And the transformative potential of laws and policies are only as good as they are implemented and enforced. So there are a couple of solutions and recommendations that I want to share with all of you. One is the importance of having women and children at the policy-making table. Historically, laws and policies were developed excluding women and children from those policy imperatives. And these policies have been shaped by male hierarchies. And that is why it has taken so long for caregiving to be placed at the center of workplace and labor laws. And now, with more and more women being engaged in policymaking and in the development of laws, what we see that caregiving is now at the heart of regulating labor and workplace and gender equality, both in the workplace and in the home. So I want to urge all of you who lead motherhood and childhood policies here in the UAE and around the world to ensure the greater advancement and engagement of women, girls, and children in policymaking. Second is the adoption of public-private partnerships. I mentioned earlier the fact that the United States lags behind the rest of the world in adopting progressive laws on caregiving. But the good news is that the private sector has taken the mantle of leadership. You may have already heard this, but Google, for example, has really transcended the narrow limitations of the national laws and has adopted 12 weeks of paid family leave. And Mark Zuckerberg himself, the founder of Facebook, has followed the example of Google and adopted the similar provisions at Facebook and has really become a role model in making sure that he takes 12 weeks of fully paid family leave at the birth of his child. So having public-private partnerships, the private sector taking the lead and adopting these policies is important, and having male role models who ensure that caregiving is placed at the epicenter of workplace policies is important. And thirdly, expanding caregiving and seeing the reality of life, that it's not only parents who give care, but in many Asian countries, grandparents and extended family members are in caregiving roles. So to make sure that family leave policies extend to cover the policies that expand the notion of what is caregiving, who gives care, to include all family members who are caregivers, including grandparents, especially grandmothers. Because what happens is that because of the disproportionate impact of caregiving on women, including grandmothers, women are pushed out of the labor market to give care. But to ensure that women's voices remain as leading voices in the marketplace, we have to make sure that the workplace and state policies create an enabling environment for caregivers to reconcile work-family obligations. And then thirdly, apart from the laws and the policies, it is important to create programming, innovative and creative programming, to ensure that caregiving is realized and actualized. So for example, South Africa has created cash transfers that recognize caregiving. And South Africa's responsive budget initiative has been the single biggest payment for alleviating child poverty in South Africa by providing cash transfers to parents and caregivers who provide caring for children. So I think these are some of the ways in which that we can go forward in realizing the potential of caregiving, in creating an enabling environment for children's full realization of creativity and innovation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rangita. Dr. Susan Bissell, now you spoke about special protection and you made the you enlisted the different categories of children in need of special protection. Now, when I look at the life online, the opportunities it provides and the threats, where do you strike the balance? And quickly, because they're asking us for the time, please.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I think, and I know there's a great commitment in this country to these issues of online protection of children. In fact, some incredible leadership. I was here a year ago at the We Protect meeting that was hosted by the government. And this, you're absolutely right, Dr. Khattab. It is a place where children can be very creative and innovative. At the same time, it's a place where they experience bullying, grooming, online sexual exploitation, etc. So I think that parents have a big role to play, and the family has a big role to play in some regulation, I would say, in the early years for sure. And then as well, there is definitely a role for state ministries of the interior, law enforcement, and others to actually crack down on this. I want to just mention one last thing, if I may, and that's about the issue of care and children's innovation and creativity. We know that there are children maybe living with disabilities or other children who are in alternative care settings, and I think special attention needs to be paid to the enabling environment in those places. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. In closing this session, I really want to thank the panelists for their very valuable inputs. And if we can put few recommendations at the end of this, I would say ensure the full implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Number two, put an action plan to implement the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, using a human rights approach, the rights of the child. Join the UNESCO Global Network of Lifelong Learning Cities, having women and children at the policy table. This is the participation element that we have talked about. Nobody can represent the concerns of women or children except themselves. No one can really have a power to represent them. The partnership between the private and public service, this is very important, and I here would like to refer to the general comment of the Committee on the Rights of the Child on the role of the private sector as a service provider in ensuring the rights of the child. The state responsibility towards empowering the family and caregivers to ensure the rights of the child. Education is not just access to education, it is quality education. And now we are talking about inclusive, sustainable, quality education. We're talking about learning, no more education, but learning and lifelong learning. شكراً جزيلاً على حسن الاستماع، وشكراً لأعضاء البانل الموقرات. شكراً.